Let's talk about the New York Jets draft. And I thought the Jets had a good draft. It wasn't any, of course, they were not going to have the draft they had last year, where they basically had like 4 first round draft picks when it was all said and done. Because don't forget, Joe Douglas wanted to trade at the end of the first round to select Brees Hall and couldn't get it done,
Right.
and had to wait until the next day to get it done. So that's, and then you get the rookie of the years on both sides. It's not going to happen every year. But in saying that, I know a lot of people were, and this is funny because some analysts, this just shows you that you separate the guys who know what they're talking about and the ones they don't. When you hear some of these beat writers or these analysts act like Joe Douglas like had a panic move after the trade up and drafted a guy that could have gone at the end of the first round. That is just so ridiculous. It's just, now if you want to say, all right, yeah, maybe New England traded up and got a guy the Jets wanted, maybe that's possible. I could see that happening. Mm-hmm. But there's no panic. It's like, okay, if this guy's gone, this guy's next. And Will McDonald, we've talked about him. It's really something else how he went from being a player from like the first time we talked to the last mock draft. We went from a guy that was a middle round type guy potentially to being a guy that we felt was first round material.
Yeah, everyone I talk to that I respect, and again, I said this multiple times with you, I don't put my ear against the media that much, and it's not disrespect. It's just I don't like to be clouded that much. But I do talk to a couple guys in the media that I do respect a lot. Both of them had McDonald as a first round pick, no question, first round pick. The question here that can be asked, and I would love for someone to ask him, what was the difference between him and Nolan Smith? They are different players. You know, Will McDonald he's a pass rusher. That's what he was brought in for. And he was played out of position at Iowa State often. They often had him this odd 4-eye look, meaning he was head up on the tackle. This defense, they're going to use wide 9 on him nonstop, meaning they're just going to chuck him as far outside as they can because out of all the pass rushers in this draft, and there's some good ones, he was the best bender.
And it's not even question, close. Yeah.
And you can make the case he's the most explosive, the guy that can get to his top speed in such a short amount of time. Part of that is because he's so light, but there's an athletic skill set here that I know Robert Sala's going to get the most out of. And if you are a team like the Jets and you're looking at what is in the AFC, and yes, you got Aaron Rodgers, you're going to score more points, your offense is going to be more efficient, blah, 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 right? You got to get to the passer on defense, and you have to be scary good there. I think that's the only shot the Jets have this year is that you need to not be good, you need to be scary good on the pass rush. And McDonald gives them an option, a weapon that they did not have heading to the draft. And I'm looking at their depth chart right now. I don't think there's 3 teams in the NFL that have a deeper group of pass rushers. And, you know, that I think that's going to be the identity of the Jets. And if they don't get a pure edge guy like this, they don't have an identity. Yeah. They have a good group of pass rushers. So, you know, that's what I like about the draft. It was a surprise to me. I don't know if they tried to move down. I do think they wanted Broderick Jones, but I don't think that's definite. They have options with, I think what Elijah Vera Tucker does for that team. Yeah. It gives them a lot of options tackle guard. So I'm not completely sold on the fact that they were going to go with Broderick Jones if he was there.
Yeah, that's the thing. I can understand that because we've thinking about Paris Johnson, but when he went as high as he did, that kind of started the process earlier, and that really is the reason why they were, if they wanted tackle. But yeah, I agree because of the fact that, look, they signed Billy Turner, which I think is a really, because they now have the depth that they needed to have. Because now you have Carter Warren coming in on the draft and Joe Tippmann, and especially Tippmann, because Tippmann can now play multiple positions if you need him to. Hopefully he'll be the day 1 starter at center. That's what you're looking for. But because of Vera Tucker, he can play, again, right tackle, right guard. You know, now you've got Billy Turner who can play multiple positions. You have the rookie from last year, Max Mitchell. You got Becton, which is going to end up being the guy who is going to make or break this offensive line this year. Because if he actually starts, and yes, I'm hearing see, last year I did not buy in on everything that they were talking about him because he was having the baby. He was still staying away from the team. He was working out on his own. They kept saying, we're okay with it. I didn't believe a word of it. I thought that this was still something that's still immaturity. I don't want to hear, and I had some fans that were critical when I said that. Oh, the kid's got a family and this and that. I go, yeah, tell that to the guys that are playing during the season, whether or not they're going to miss games because of their kid's going to be born. Those are the sacrifices professional athletes make all the time. And nobody's saying that it's off season, whatever. But the fact was, when you're trying to be the certain player you need to be, dude, you got to be at the camp. And if your wife's going to have a kid, you get on a plane and you fly there, and hopefully you're there for the birth of your child. You don't hang there for 2 or 3 weeks while your wife's getting ready to have a baby. So that I didn't believe it was. That's the reason I felt, no, I'm not getting it, but I'm getting it this year. I felt that now they're saying all the right things. He's working out with the team. His weight is now better than it's ever been. So that's because if he starts and becomes the player that they envision, now this offensive line becomes above average. So anyway, what do you think about Carter Warren? Because I heard a lot of the talk about the fact that if Carter Warren did not have the injury, there was a chance if he played really well, he could have been an end of the first round draft pick.
Yeah, that seems a little rich, but definitely a day 2 guy. Came into the process over summer, actually had tape notes on him from the previous year because there was a shot he was going to come out in last draft. So I had done some prep work on him prior to the season. I did say there's top 100 potential in his game. NFL body, no question. Great first couple steps, no question. Sustainability and sheer strength, like that man strength, you just don't know. So he spent a lot of this process rehabbing that knee injury that he sustained. So what kind of physical condition is he in? But long-term projection, both him and Tippmann, I would say will be future starters. And, to get those guys back to back after overlooking Wilder's offensive line in that first round, good value, good strategy.
There were some fans that were panicking after they did not draft an offensive lineman in the first round. It was like, just wait and see.
I'll tell you what. I wasn't as nervous about it. I really wasn't. I even think Tippmann, the pick there, I think that kid could be a guard. If they really needed to move, if they needed to move Tucker to the outside,
at right tackle,
which you have to be comfortable with that. I think Max Mitchell, I think you have something in him, maybe a swing tackle or an inside out versatile guy. So I just like the option that Tippmann gives them. Should things start to go south elsewhere. But Carter Warren is without a doubt a tackle only. And whether he's a backup, whether he's a swing tackle, whether he's, your long-term future option at right tackle, all those options are on the table right now. And to get that in round 4, I've said this 15 times in the past 2 hours, there are such good players available in that round. And I think he was one of them.
We just talked about a couple of teams that needed offensive linemen and that bypass guys like this in this position. So you know what? That's fine. And by the way, also, I this was important because as a fan, I have every time I looked at that depth chart and the backups, I just would shake my head. The Dan Feeneys of the world. Those guys. I mean, come on. You got to start replenishing your offensive linemen with youth and at least guys that have started in the league. And now I look at this offensive line backup situation, and I have never seen this offensive line that I can recall this deep. Never. I mean, now they have legitimate guys that if there were injuries like last year, you can see them. Yeah, they're going to lose a little bit, but nowhere near the way that they lost talent-wise the gap last year between first and second string. So
couldn't agree more. I think there are issues on this roster. Offensive line is not one of them.
And one of the things that we talked about and they did not address, and I'm still concerned with, was bringing in another player, linebacker, safety in the middle of that defense. They didn't do it, and I'm a bit concerned with that because right now there's not that. I don't see that player on the roster, and now maybe the pass rush will help, and the better these younger pass rushers from last year, the 2 guys they drafted, and you bring in McDonald, and Lawson is second year after the injury, so he needs to have a big year because his contract's going to be coming up. So they should have, and then Huff is there. They should have a pass rush that will generate turnovers because that was the missing ingredient with their defense last year with the turnovers. And that's the one thing I'm a little bit concerned with is they didn't add an actual player to their defense that could possibly, except of course the pass rusher.
Right. And the pass rush, it makes everyone else better. It makes the coverage better. Coverage does not necessarily always make the pass rush better. So I think the route in which they took to try and improve this defense was the right one. Do I think they wanted a linebacker or safety in the mix? Probably. I mean, they used 5, maybe even 6 spots in their undrafted free agency on, off-ball linebackers and safeties. So I think they knew that they, just maybe the value just wasn't there, or they placed more value on the other spots of the roster that needed another player. And so I wouldn't sleep on what comes out in the free agency period. The pro personnel department there always does a good job of finding guys off of waivers that can come in and make a contribution. So I don't think they're done building there. And, the fact that they put so many resources into undrafted free agents at those spots kind of strengthens that notion. But in terms of the rest of the draft, I like 2 of the players that they took day 3 a lot in terms of where they got them. The running back, and Abinikanda from Pittsburgh.
Bargain, yeah.
It really was a good bargain, and he might be a big part of this running game early on if Breece Hall's not ready right away. Yep. And you kind of like his running style in that regard, that it's kind of, he doesn't have the best feel, but the dude, you tell him where to go, he's just going to put his head down, put his blinders on, get a lot of speed, a lot of force going downhill, and he'll run through arm tackles. If there's a gap, he'll get through it. He's got enough speed, he's got enough juice. He's a good big play back. But Zach Kuntz, he's one of the more intriguing prospects in this entire class, and he's been that way since last summer. He's got some really ugly tape because he's so tall and he's so long and he's a little kind of like baby giraffe type mover. But then you see some of his highlight reels attacking the ball in the air with defenders all over him. You saw him run routes at the combine and pro day, and I'm like, he has it. It's just maybe it's not natural to him yet. I love this tight end room for him because you're not throwing him into the mix right away. But he's by far the best athlete in that room the second he walks in there.
Yeah, the hope is that in a couple of years, if it all works out, you've got Ruckert and Kuntz basically as your top 2 tight ends.
Exactly. Maybe even as soon as next year.
Together, they should work together really well.
They do. And, Kuntz, I just don't know if everyone is, really cognizant of what of a unicorn this is. I mean, we're talking about an athlete at a size that we've never seen before. Yep. So
that's why he was a Penn State guy.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch him, progress over the years and see what they do with him.
And also, look, the corner, Bernard Converse, when you get him in the 6th round, I like that because they are in a little bit of a situation if there's an injury. See, if there's one injury, Eccles can fill in okay. But if there's a second one, that's when there's – so I like the fact they added another guy like that to their room.
Smart.
And overall, I think the only other position that I was a little bit unsure of, and we talked about it, was defensive tackle. Now, they added Al Woods after the draft to go along with Quentin Jefferson. So basically, they've got bodies. Jefferson, Woods, Thomas. Okay, bodies. But that's something they're going to have to work on next offseason is to get a younger line mate. And by the way, I'm passing down. John Franklin Myers is moving inside anyway.
Yeah.
So, And by the way, anything on Barnes or Bernard Converse that are they just guys?
To me, they're special teamers. Okay. I think that's why they were drafted for the 2023 season. Like you said, Bernard Converse probably by default will be the number 4, number 5 corner on that team before long. So a little bit of risk there. But Barnes, I think, was just drafted for special teams purpose. Yep. And, good athlete. If you get something out of him, develops, maybe you see something next year. Not sure about the long-term future of C.J. Mosley.
What do you like between Sherwood, Barnes, and Nasruldeen?
I'm still Team Sherwood. I liked him at Auburn. I liked what I've seen out of him in spurts. I thought the safety linebacker convert for him was the way to go when he came out of school. So it's just it's early. I mean, I know we want results pretty quickly, but I think year 3 is going to be big for him.
Now's the time. Yeah. Couple of years.
Yes, now's the time.
That's okay, but now's the time. And any of the free agents, they did pick up a couple of guys. Jason Brownlee, the wide receiver, and I see that they just signed or at least brought in Travis Dye, which is not a bad guy to sign for depth in the running back room. Anybody we should keep an eye on?
Those are the two guys I was going to talk about, but don't sleep on the center / guard, Brett Lang. He's a guy that he's one of the most physical, most fun players to watch along the offensive line. Doesn't always know what he's doing. He's coming from a low level of college football, Minnesota Duluth, but from those kind of programs, you need to see domination, and his tape is like what we saw out of Mekhi Becton out of Louisville, just like tossing guys left and right. So, and he measured in pretty well, 6'3", 304. Probably needs a year in the weight room, probably a year in the practice squad. But that's someone I think you can get something out of down the road. Okay. And Travis Dye, I love him. He's one of my favorite players to watch in college football. I know he doesn't necessarily carry a lot of pro traits to the table, had a fumbling issue as well, crowded running back room. But, he's the kind of guy that coaches fall in love with pretty quick. So just keep an eye on him.
He's got to stay healthy. So, but that's why it's good that you get a kid like that after the draft and stash him on a practice squad.